Hello again, all none of my viewers. This is Lessons from the Table once again. And I've got a bit of a curious one today. If you've clicked on this, you've seen the title, so you kind of know what it is. Embrace the chaos. And how to do it, when to do it, why to do it, when not to do it, when to rein it in. So I guess it's a bit of a twofer, right? I want to talk about embracing the chaos as a DM, why it's an important part of your game, and like I said, also when to rein it in. So I want to get right off with saying this isn't a must. This is the sort of thing that augments a lot of games of Dungeons & Dragons. In fact, one of the reasons people play Dungeons & Dragons, at least in the modern context, is we're used to video games, and the freedom of D&D is exciting, right? We've played some pretty great RPGs by now. There has been a lot of them. This is talking about in video gaming and computer gaming. There's been a lot of great content with regards to that. Player freedom has increased phenomenally. The entire idea of an open world RPG, right? The fact that these are things that exist in gaming, right? That's always got better and better and better. So the one thing that D&D has always had that gaming may never truly achieve is that absolute total freedom. The freedom that says, no matter what's been put in front of me, no matter what there is in the world right now, I can, at this exact moment, decide to slit my character's throat and roll up a new one. You have an absolute freedom. I know that that's a really specific example, but I mean, it could be anything, right? It could be, I want to go punch the barkeep. You know, I want to go do this thing. I want to go do that thing. I heard about those mines. I want to go explore them, right? And the DM can just create content. If you, as a player, have decided to do something that maybe wasn't previously accounted for, the DM can make something happen for you, right? Now, there's some limit to this, the limit being the time that it makes to create something. These aren't necessarily things that can happen completely on the fly, but you as a DM know that if your player goes, you know what, never mind the various plot hooks in this town, like never mind that mercenary contract or that deckhand job, or, you know, rescuing the blacksmith's daughter. I actually want to go to the big city and see if I can scam some people. Now, also as a player, for what it's worth, do try and go along with the DM's content, because you'll probably find that that's going to be, like, the best for the most part, because that's obviously what they've planned for, what they've accounted for. And as a DM, it's not too difficult to make the thing you have planned, content-wise, the most attractive thing for your players. But, as they say in war, no plan survives contact with the enemy. No content survives contact with the players. This gets repeated a lot in sort of the conventional DM wisdom, as it were, because it's completely true. You can have the party, you know, go and rescue the blacksmith's daughter from a hag coven, but when they're there, decide, actually, these hags know some things the party kind of want to know about. You know, the sorcerer's got some mysterious things that happened in his past that he wants to understand. The hags can share the knowledge. So they actually strike a deal with the hags instead. You didn't plan for that, but now you got to make it work. Maybe they don't actually rescue the blacksmith's daughter at all. Hell, maybe the deal is, alright, we could kick your asses right now, Hag Coven, but we're going to not. We're going to let you keep the blacksmith's daughter in exchange for this knowledge. And then the party's got to go back to the blacksmith, somehow explain what's happened. Let it happen, right? As a DM, embrace the chaos. That is the time to let the players just go with it. If your sorcerer does that, you know, they've managed to get the right crowd control spells down on the Hag Coven. I don't know, they're incapacitated, maybe on the brink of death. The Hag Coven wants to negotiate to save their own skins, and the players actually take that and run with it and make a deal instead of finishing the holy quest or what have you that you'd put them on. Embrace it. Let it happen. The reason for that is because that's what D&D can do. A quest in a video game can only have a certain number of set predetermined outcomes. And the closest you can get to truly open world, in my opinion, in video games are games where you can just kill a quest giver or kill an important NPC and be unable to complete a quest, which I also think is actually kind of unsatisfying in a lot of ways. D&D, if the quest giver dies by accident or on purpose, you, the DM, can just invent another one. It's that simple. If the blacksmith's daughter would have put up a notice on the board saying, my daughter was stolen by a hag covered in the woods, but then actually by the time the party reaches the town, some other bullshit happened, there was a fire, the blacksmith died, or maybe the party's actions caused the blacksmith to die in a fire, or, you know, there was crossfire in a goblin raid, blacksmith died, whatever. Now it's the carpenter's daughter. You can't do that in a video game, you can do it in D&D. So when I say embrace the chaos, what I really mean is use the flexibility of D&D to your advantage. And let things go in directions you didn't anticipate. Because D&D is also inherently interactive. You create a story with your players as you go, which means your players should be able to be involved in that story. If they take it into an unknown direction, that's a great time for you as the DM to throw yourself at it, right? There's a really interesting example of this that I saw recently. For those of you who watch Critical Role, in the episode, what is at the time of this upload, a couple of weeks old, Dockside Diplomacy, I believe, is the one. The party is doing some other thing, and they end up boarding a ship. It's completely, like, they do not end up following through on what the initial intention was. They go on this massive side thing, and now they're off doing an actual thing related to that. Now, Matt Mercer at that time, I don't think he was anticipating. In fact, he says outright that he was not anticipating the party stealing the ship, but it was in port, ready to go. They had enough people to rudimentarily crew it, get it out of the port. Why not? If that's what the party's doing, that's what's happening. The ship is leaving the harbor. And he embraced it. He went on with it. And the entire time, he was smiling and he was laughing and he was saying, I love Dungeons and Dragons. Because that's the exact part of Dungeons and Dragons that you can only really get from Dungeons and Dragons, right? That's the place and the time where the players, for whatever reason, end up going in some complete new direction. Now, again, at the time of the upload of this video, they're on the boat. They're, like, going to places and doing things on the boat. They're to hire crew. There's all this nautical-themed things going on, which is quite a different flavor to what has happened in the past in this particular campaign. Might not have also been what Matt Mercer was inherently expecting, but he had that tool in his arsenal to go, okay, if they're on a ship, well, here's how traveling on a ship works. Here are the complications that might happen when they're traveling, and here's what they might find when they arrive. He could just go in that direction. Now, that doesn't mean that you as a DM need to be prepared for every eventuality. That's just not possible. What it means is be willing to prepare for any eventuality when it comes to pass. You are totally within your right to end the session after 2 hours when you normally go for 4 because the party stole a ship and have decided they want to sail to a nearby island. You can go, I'm going to be honest with you guys, I have no idea how sailing works. I don't really have any good encounters prepared for this. What we'll do instead, let's wrap this up here, and I'll prepare this for our next session so that we can actually have a good session of you being on the boat rather than me half-assing it. I want to make this a good game for you guys. And your players are going to be like, hell yeah, awesome. Our DM is facilitating our wacky side story. And they are going to get a better session if you do that. And feel free to. I know it can be hard, especially when you had something prepared for that session, or even a number of things prepared, and you kind of get half of it done, but also, just because you didn't get to do it doesn't mean you can't ever do it. Maybe they end up back in that same place and just kind of finish what they hadn't done. Or you can just completely recycle the content. Whatever they were going to do for the next 2 hours, you can repurpose it into whatever they're going to do with their destination, or maybe something they do 3 months down the line. Who knows? Who cares? Or maybe you never get to use it again. Maybe you set it aside for a one-shot. Maybe it comes up in a different campaign. Let your content go. Don't get too attached to it. And I think there is one major way that things get derailed that I think a lot of DMs not necessarily struggle with, but aren't sure how to handle. So what I want to do now is address that side of it, and this is then going to segue into this idea of when to rein in the chaos. It's not that hard for a well-equipped party with a number of charismatic folk with all sorts of social abilities to derail a combat encounter through diplomacy. This should be rewarded. If your bard is able to convince the bandits that were about to rob them to, back off, let it happen. That's part of what a bard's meant to be good at. If your party was going to be raiding a gang hideout, but your warlock, who has Mask of Many Faces, goes, actually, I want to see if we can infiltrate here. I want to see if we can, track down a gang member, take him out, assume his persona, maybe infiltrate some meetings and get a better read on the situation, take it out from the inside, who knows, right? Let him do that, right? Reward it. He put that effort when making his character to go, this is something my character would do. He also mechanically took that invocation. Don't let that never be useful. And I know that this does get repeated quite a lot, but one of the things I think a lot of DMs struggle with is there are abilities out there, and I know certainly I've had my struggles with this, by the way. There are abilities out there that seem like they're inherently at odds with combat, and a lot of D&D is combat. I don't mean in terms of like, it's mostly a combat sim, don't worry about the roleplay. I mean more in terms of like, when you build a class, or rather build a character with your class as a part of it, you're looking at the mechanical features when you're making that selection. Now, there are flavor things, and players do take flavor into account, or at least the overwhelming majority do. In fact, some even go for flavor over mechanics, right? In which case, respect the mechanics as well, but you're often looking at the mechanics, how things work together, what can I actually do at the table when I roll my dice, when I'm in combat, how many attacks do I get, what weapons do I use, what damage is that going to deal, how can I make that damage better? That is a very big part of D&D. I think everyone knows that, right? And DMs plan for that. They account for that. They go, I've got this party of 5 people. How do I make a balanced combat? And you can look that up, and you can find it all about that, and then you can make a balanced combat, and then your party comes to it, and then they fight. And what a lot of DMs don't account for is making that perfectly balanced combat, and then the party comes up to it, and then the bard charms their way out of it. Or you've got enough charismatic characters that actually the whole party just kind of sweet talks their way through it. I had a fascinating situation like this. I was actually the player. I was playing the bard, where basically what the DM had planned was the big bad was going to kind of make this reveal, right? Like, I have returned at this very public festival. Now, my character went, okay, we're going to go to this festival. Like, we've heard that something's going to go down here. We've got to know what this is about. And my bard went, I'm going to see if I can sneak backstage, right? Like, I want to really know. I don't want to miss out. And just with enough good rolls, managed to find out, overheard some kind of whispering, disguised myself as a drow to, be able to talk to this little shady enclave of people. Then I ended up impersonating their leader, this alleged big bad, fooled them into thinking that I was her, and totally turned half of them against the actual one when she revealed herself, because suddenly she reveals herself, and I go, that's not the real villain, I'm the real villain. And suddenly there's confusion in the camp, right? And then just through some lucky rolls here and there, and other derailments, and me just kind of causing confusion among the ranks, we ended up pinning down this big bad guy and killing them. They were meant to get away. This was meant to be kind of a set piece. It wasn't meant to be, impossible to win, but it was meant to be like, okay, you deal a bit of a blow, you kill some underlings, but mainly it's this big scary reveal, and now you know what the quest is going to be. Instead, we just completely removed the threat, and suddenly we kind of had nothing else to do after that session. So after that, we just kind of picked a direction and went. The DM made some content for that. They made it happen. The DM embraced the chaos. They embraced the possibility that I, playing a bard, might, through various uses of spells like Disguise Self and a couple of good rolls here and there, some good persuasion checks and all that, could completely negate this combat encounter, at least how it was intended to go. We did still have a combat, but it was completely different to what was intended. and probably a lot longer in a lot of ways. Suddenly there was an entire big bad guy that he had to stat out that we'd already kind of half shut down by that point. And there was so many more pieces involved in it because suddenly we had allies on our side that we didn't have before, but it was very satisfying on our end because this thing that we tried to do totally came to fruition. Now, my character was just kind of winging it here, right? My character was just seeing how far it could go and going, well, if I get in trouble, it's probably going to be a fight anyway. Might as well do what I can before that. Try and even the tide. Try and swing things on our side. And it worked out. And it was great. Now, here's when not to do that. Or at least when not to embrace the chaos. There are also times where your players will be trying things. They'll, go backstage and try and find something out. But there's nothing to find out. Now, it's good practice as a DM to at least put something in there, right? Like, sure, maybe they don't go backstage and find a shadowy group of drow who are talking about their super evil plan to reveal the campaign's big villainess at this major event. But maybe they do find a noble's son has run away, or is about to run away, or one of the members of this theater is a noble's son from one town over who has run away. And maybe the party, at some later date, goes, let's go let that noble know about this. Or maybe they don't, right? But, have something in there. Don't just let them go backstage, roll a bunch of things, and, oh, well, you hear nothing. And they're like, well, that was a waste of time. But what can also happen is, they roll, and often this happens if maybe the player rolls low in trying to hear something, and you go, oh, they don't hear anything. They're like, I want to go over there instead and see if I can see anything. And you just end up on this long, drawn-out thing where the character is somewhere that nothing is going to happen. Now, there is an element of fun in this. It's that kind of chasing of a thought that the player is indulging in, and that is fun, provided all of your players are into it. If it's just one person kind of going off on their own thing for an hour, maybe start to reel that in. That's another situation in which you want to rein these things in, right? But the time after all that to rein it in is when you've had enough of a session of nothing getting done. That's a point where I, as a DM, tend to say, all right, guys, this has been a bit fun and a bit wacky, but, here are some people you could have, I've dropped these names, you could talk to a couple of people about the situation, maybe get some more info because you're clearly, a bit stumped here for plans. And the reason I say that to my players directly is because otherwise they're going to spend the second half of the session also doing nothing. And in that second half, it's going to stop being fun nothing and it's going to start being boring nothing. And that's going to be the taste in their mouths when we finish off for the night. Everyone's going to be bored. We're going to feel like we've made no progress in, the 4 to 6 hours that we've played Dungeons & Dragons for. And it's not fun at all. It's a bit hard as a DM to have your finger on the pulse of when that point is. If you have, a regular break time in your session, for example, my group, we start at 4 p.m., and we'll go until about 9 or 10, which means we break for dinner partway through that. And there have been sessions where, we've come back from the dinner break and I've gone, all right, just by the way, so these are the things you've heard about and this is the situation you're in. And often that just kind of flips a switch. They're like, oh yeah, this NPC that we could have talked to and didn't. Oh, right, and suddenly they're a bit less headless, suddenly a bit more stuff gets done, suddenly everyone's having fun again. Whether or not they're moving towards whatever else you had planned for that session, at least they are moving. It can be entertaining for players to just kind of go around in circles and fire off spells, get up to wacky antics, and have it all come to nothing in the end. There is fun that happens in that time, because players are role-playing, dice are getting rolled, things do occur, even if they don't mean anything, but there is a point in Dungeons & Dragons where your character's actions have to then also mean something for it to continue to be fun. It's not fun to just have meaningless antics for hours and hours on end. One caveat. Some tables are exclusively like that. DMs out there who run that sort of table, you know who you are. You don't need any of this advice that I've just given. You know that your players, maybe they're just the sort of people that, it's like coming home and flipping on mindless television. When they play Dungeons & Dragons, it's just kind of an escape. They're not really too concerned with some major plot. They just kind of want to dig about, roll some dice, have some fun, roleplay a little, be someone else for a couple of hours, and just kind of get lost in all that. If you're that kind of DM, you are embracing the chaos at all times. That's not easy to do, so kudos to you. As for the rest of you DMs, know when to embrace the chaos, know when to rein it in. And that's this week's lesson from the table. Thanks very much for watching, as always. I should have a couple of these a little bit more regularly out. I've had a few other engagements over the last couple of weeks that have made this a bit more staggered. But for now, thanks very much for watching. I'll see you next time.